And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, Zeno Media, and, of course, Simul Radio and Simul TV. If you'd like to find out about the programming we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. And on Simul TV to watch the X Zone TV channel, which is channel 21 on Simul TV, www.simultv.com. X Zone Nation, my guest this hour is Jim Vieira. Did I say that right, Jim?
Vieira, like Meredith Vieira.
Okay. Vieira is a stonemason, author, explorer, and host of the History Channel's shows Search for the Lost Giants that aired in 2014, Roanoke, Search for the Lost Colony in 2015, and Return to Roanoke, Search for the Seven in 2016. James is the co-author of Giants on Record with Hugh Newman. Jim has investigated worldwide ancient stone sites, studied global indigenous oral traditions, religious documents, the readings of the great mystic, and the literature of secret societies to form an alternative theory regarding the origins of civilization. A theory almost in perfect alignment with the readings of the famed sleeping prophet, Edgar Cayce. If you'd like to get more information on Jim, his Facebook page is facebook.com/Giants on Record. And Jim, welcome to the X Zone.
Thanks for having me, Rob. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Tell us, how did you get involved in this line of fascination?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was a tumble down the rabbit hole that was unintended.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a stonemason by trade. My brother is also a stonemason, and we're avid hikers and antiquarians and historians. And I always had a fascination with stone structures, mm-hmm. and stuff we would find in the woods here in Massachusetts and New England. Didn't really fit the context that they were colonial. Archaeologists don't really allow for Native American stonework in the past to exist in New England, although other places in the country obviously have Native American stonework. So, by virtue of investigating that mystery and a lot of the things we found in the woods, I started to read through town and county histories, looking for accounts of settlers showing up and identifying Native American stonework that pre-existed, which I did, and my brother did too. But I also started to stumble across these really strange accounts of giant skeletons unearthed by scientists of the time in the 1800s and early 1900s, very well-respected individuals. It started to catch my attention, the anatomical measurements of a stationary object in an era of inefficient communication, noting the same kind of strange anatomic anomalies like massive jawbones and double rows of teeth. So my investigative mind took over, and I spent probably over 10 years investigating, writing the book that me and my co-author Hugh Newman did, and I just fell down the rabbit hole, and here I am.
Well, let me ask you, speaking about giants, what are the North American legends concerning giants?
Oh, that's a good question. The Native Americans there's two stories when you talk about giants, around the world too. There are like a benevolent race or individuals who were giant-sized, who showed up after the flood to repromulgate civilization. The Veracoches and the beings from the first time who show up in Egypt, and they are the Tuatha De Danann, these mystical beings who show up in the British Isles after the Great Flood. And in the United States, there were benevolent, like a royal class of Native Americans who organized society. They were the wisdom keepers and the shamans. And in fact, you could see, in my book, we have a chapter on the native legends, and right up until basically the contact period, all the early explorers encountered absolutely enormous giant chiefs like Tuscaloosa in Alabama are 8 foot tall. And the natives also had legends of a malevolent race portrayed as often cannibalistic, red-haired, especially out in the southwest portion of the country. So virtually every tribe around the country has oral traditions that are steeped in lore about giants and an ancient race and little people too, if you can believe that. And all the Native elders met together in the late 1990s, organized by Vine Deloria, the Lakota Sioux elder, to share the indigenous information about giants and little people that all these native tribes had. So just right there is a huge point of emphasis I would make. It's like all these distant lineages and tribes that have tons of integrity are basically telling the science fiction story about the past, about giants and little people and great floods. But science is starting to catch up to a lot of these mythical ideas.
So where did these giants go? How come they don't roam the earth today?
Yeah, there's a lot of different theories that atmospheric conditions were different in the past. We had megafauna and megaflora. The Pleistocene era went on, I believe, for about 2 million years, and it ended abruptly with the cataclysm 12,900 years ago. And at the time, it was a really strange era where there was beavers as big as, Volkswagen bugs. There was huge lizards and giant sloths and different kinds of flora and fauna that existed. And then the cataclysm, the Younger Dryas impact event that occurred 12,900 years ago, when there was a cometary impact on the ice sheet of North America that abruptly, caused a cataclysm, and we dipped into another 1,200-year mini-ice age. The point being that the atmospheric conditions changed. If your audience is familiar with the work of Immanuel Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision, or David Talbot, there's a lot of evidence that atmospheric conditions were different in the past, and actually humans were just always, small prototypes. Like we go back and we think of Lucy 7 million years ago, that in the late Pleistocene, 15, 20, 50,000 years ago, there were purported to be giant humans. And even after the flood, some existed. And I guess to answer your question fully, if you go into Patagonia in the 1500s and 1600s, and who the early explorers met would be considered giant people, like sometimes up to 9 feet tall in Mexico. All the early explorers you can name encountered giant humans, and all the chroniclers wrote about them. De Soto, Coronado, Vespucci. But then again, like 90% of native populations were wiped out by disease and warfare and colonialism.
Besides the oral traditions of the giants, is there any archaeological evidence to substantiate these claims?
There's archaeological evidence certainly to substantiate an anthropological mystery, that from Patagonia to Virginia to other places around our country, that like by the Smithsonian's own scientists, for instance, an enormous amount of 7 foot and taller skeletons were unearthed in the burial mounds in the United States, Native American burial mounds, well beyond the normal population's incidence of 7 foot tall individuals. You say, 7 foot, that's not a giant. We got plenty of 7 NBA players that are that tall. But there is an anthropological mystery, no question about it, that's been essentially proven, that you just have like a royal class, if you will, that is just vastly more taller than our normal population now.
But Jim,
now,
if the Smithsonian scientists are saying that these giants were found in the mounds, where are the skeletons?
Well, the Smithsonian's own records have numerous accounts. 1873 36-inch skull that is measured by Thomas Perrin. All kinds of 7'8", 7'10". Basically, we are told by the Smithsonian that, that I don't really know what I've never got like an official, like these guys didn't know how to measure or work a tape measure or something like that. I think it's just considered a silly idea, a religious idea. It's in their own records. There are anthropological and archaeological heads of institutions that reported absolutely enormous skeletons as well. I just think it's one of those things where it's in the historical record, and it's just an idea that's derided and mocked, even though it's right there kind of in plain sight. And the analogy I would make is like the Clovis barrier, the idea that nobody entered the United States and North America till about 13,000 years ago, which we know now that barrier has been shattered. and it took like 90 years to overturn that dogmatic paradigm.
All right,
and
Jim, we've got to take our first break. Please stand by. Exonation Jim Vieira is our special guest this hour. His Facebook page is Giants on Record. And Jim and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Jim Vieira is our special guest this hour. Exonation, Facebook.com/Giants on Record. Jim, how come there are prehistoric dinosaur bones recreated, put together, and you can actually see the skeletons? You can actually match the skeletal remains with the scientific evidence. How come there is no skeletal remains anywhere of the giants? If, in fact, did exist.
Yeah. That's a very good question. Dinosaurs aren't considered a controversial idea, maybe by some, but most people just understand that they roamed the earth and what they were all about. There was this war between science and religion in the late 1800s that, science walked away the victor, and religious ideas like a great flood, giants, and a lost world, they basically got marginalized, and the idea of the supernatural also, scientific rationalism and the Cartesian model took over, I think, with to a fault. But the idea of giants has always been considered a religious idea, or a just an idea that is driven by fanatics, or just myth and legend and fantasy. I would say, if you immerse yourself in the literature and the accounts and the specific nature of them, thousands of them I've read through, things like there's a 9-foot skeleton in Iowa in this town. The doctor wired it together. The town is abuzz. They got a picture of it. There's a newspaper men there, and over and over again, you hear these stories, and then there is nothing to be found for the remains, or they get repatriated. It's a really it's a vexing thing to investigate. That's for sure.
All right, I can understand that, but how come there have been no finds in current time where that could not be done? That the media would be abuzz with it. You'd have scientists clamoring there. The internet would be abuzz. You would not be able to hide the fact that this giant does in fact exist. How come this isn't happening? There's been
finds that are 7'8" in Iraq, 7'6" in China, on the edge of what's considered normal human range that have been found recently. I would say it's a matter of wait for the evidence to show up. Don't talk about some conspiracy. A lot of people dive into that, like, oh, there's this vast conspiracy to cover this up, and it's like, I work with professionals all the time, and I'm like, that's just impossible. You can't cover up all this stuff around the world, and academics don't act in concert to cover up evidence. I'd say there aren't the excavations that took place when all the explorers showed up in the United States and unearthed all these burial mounds. Those things don't really occur anymore. But to your point, you would assume at some point somebody's going to be, digging into a foundation and unearth an ancient tomb. And you would, I'm not a believer in academic cover-ups for sure. And it's just one of those vexing things about the mystery of giants.
You're not a believer of academic cover-ups?
No, I work with professionals. I'm friends with archaeologists and anthropologists and biologists, and I believe that science is very, very, very slow to react. When you go to the doctor and your appendix bursts on the table, thank God they could take out your appendix. But I don't, there's not a holistic approach in Western medicine, for instance. They don't tell you to do all these things for a holistic orientation towards your health. And the same thing with the sciences. They don't introduce ideas like, of the mystics or religious documents, oral traditions from indigenous peoples aren't used as evidence. We've thrown out like 10,000 years of evidence. So there's a non-holistic approach. So science can really ignore large amounts of evidence for like geological cataclysms, great floods, things like that. I don't believe, I believe science is limited in its scope and has a lot of errors, but I don't believe in, some kind of vast conspiracy, though.
Well, then how can we say that if one of the best-selling books in the world talks about giants, and I'm talking about the Bible, the Nephilim, those who, the giants of old who made or laid with the fair maidens of earth, and what about David and Goliath? How do we explain that? How can we say, all right, we believe what the Bible says with no evidence whatsoever, but that's got to be true because it's the Bible, and yet when it comes to the suppression of information, and there are several examples where academia has been flinging the crap to the wall for eons, so I don't trust academia because
I know that, yeah.
Let's take a look at who discovered North America. Oh, Christopher Columbus. Wrong. He didn't discover the Americas. The Vikings did. So how can we trust anything that science, history, archaeology, or any of the other so-called sciences tell us when we've caught them lying through their teeth?
No, I agree. I agree. I'm not saying. I guess what I'm saying, it's like, it's just these ideas, these theories, just get held on to so intently.
Right.
All I'm saying is, like, I don't believe there's like, let's hide evidence for all this, whatever find we're not really down with.
So how do we?
But no, I agree with you, definitely.
How do we explain the fact that there's no evidence that these giants really existed?
That's a good one.
And isn't science based on fact?
It's supposed to be.
So where's the facts? Where's the evidence? Where's the meat?
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm not trying to say that I just find it's a real conundrum, in investigating this phenomena, because when you read through the records, and it's not just the great chroniclers like Flavius Josephus, they talk about giant bones. There are all these accounts of the giant of Gabara, 9'9" and 10-foot Chinese guards, and over and over again, not just bones, but living giants all throughout history. Maximus Thrax, 8'6".
But how do we know that they really did exist if there's no evidence to support the claim? Hey, listen, every kid believes that Santa Claus is going to be flying in the sky Christmas Eve delivering them gifts. And, we all know that's a bit of wishful thinking. But when we're just like the Easter Bunny. We know that.
I know what you're saying. It's I would say there's certainly evidence for an anthropological mystery that is out of the realm of normal. I guess let me throw this out there.
Sure.
There's a new human cousin that's been found called the Denisovans, and one of the main arguments against the idea of giants is that, like, there was no way that science could have missed a lost race, let alone a lost race of giants. Now, in 2010 in Siberia, the Denisovans were found, the human cousins who interbred with Neanderthals and humans 40,000 years ago. And the only evidence we have are two teeth that are so large, they thought they were the teeth of cave bears, They took them to the Max Planck Institute and sequenced them and realized that they are a human cousin that mated with us. And the head of evolutionary biology, Svante Pavo, at the Max Planck just wrote a paper where they found a skull fragment that is exceptionally thick. And he is basically saying that the Denisovans, they look like they were of giant stature. We don't know exactly if they were 8-9 feet tall, but they appear to be absolutely enormous, interbred with humans. And there is DNA among populations in Australia, the United States, and South America. So, to that point, which was once considered anthropological heresy, it has now, been substantiated by science that it existed. So, it's a new avenue of investigation.
All right, I agree with you that these teeth were found, the part of the skull was found, but without the rest of the skeleton. Maybe this person just had a big head. Maybe it was a deformity. How can we say with any certainty that this is proof that giants existed? I'm having a problem with this.
They were different individuals, not just one. They weren't. It wasn't any disease conditions. But yeah, you need the long bones, like the femur bones,
exactly.
To indicate height. It's a good indication. Or it's a good start, with the giant teeth and things like that. I'm not going to say that I've seen the 11-foot skeleton. I haven't. All I could say is that I've seen quite a bit of evidence to indicate that there's a mystery here, that there were populations that were much taller than fits with the out of Africa theory, which is now in its own, just like the Clovis barrier is dead. It's kind of like everybody's rethinking human origins. And I say that I believe that giants are part of the history of our past. And I'm not going to say, I got a 10-foot skeleton in my basement.
All right, I've got a question for you when we come back from the news. Exonation, our guest this hour is Jim Vieira. And if you'd like to find out more about Jim, check him out on Facebook, facebook.com/giantsonrecord.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Jim Vieira is my special guest, Exonation, www.facebook.com/Giants on Record. And Jim is the author, along with Hugh Newman, of Giants on Record. Now, Jim, where can your book be bought?
Amazon.com.
All righty. Jim, before we went to the news, we were talking about the skull fragment that was found in the two teeth. Mm-hmm. And that kind of seems to support the theory or the hypothesis that giants did exist. Yes?
It does, but you need the long bones, you need femur bones. I guess the point I'm making it's not you need to believe this. It's more like it's worthy of further investigation.
Sure.
But I feel like the idea of giants is tied up into this idea of the lost world. A lot of these ideas, like giants and little people, the Great Flood, an ancient cataclysm, megalith builders who go back over 10,000 years old. All these things are starting to be verified by science. Hobbits were found in Indonesia in 2003 on the Isle of Flores. Yep. 3-foot tall human cousins. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey is about 12,000 years old. A cataclysm occurred. A great flood occurred. And tied into this, the Rosicrucians, Freemasons, Theosophists, Edgar Cayce, Rudolf Steiner, religious documents, and oral traditions all around the world talk about giants. They talk about little people. They talk about a lot of these ideas of the lost world. Mm-hmm. So that's why it catches my attention. It's kind of a holistic story that giants seem to be part of, and that not only that, but we have lots of documentation about this. But to your point, show me the 10-foot skeleton. I'm with you.
Yeah.
The case doesn't get solved until you have the remains. No question about it.
Isn't it true, though, that people, as we go back in time, were shorter and smaller than they are today?
That's part of the evolutionary theory that Australopithecines evolved into Homo sapiens,
right.
And there was some pushback against that idea that evolution, of course, is occurring. You can see it, mm-hmm. But where humans came from is a different matter. And there are some who think humans were genetically engineered. I think Watson from Crick and Watson, after examining the human genome, he said the idea that this is a side effect of evolution is as improbable as a hurricane hitting a dump and creating a 747.
But once again, we don't know everything. We're just on the cusp of trying to understand DNA, genome, quantum mechanics, quantum physics. Like, we're not there yet. So when a scientist says something like that, where it can't be evolution, how the hell do they know that? They're only basing they're basing their statement on facts that are only related on the experience and the knowledge of today. What happens if tomorrow something else is discovered to disqualify that statement?
Absolutely correct. And there's a lot of theories that are just that. They're, like, even plate tectonics, there's a lot of geologists who don't think that's the way geology works. Yeah. And it's like anthropology and archaeology are educated guesses about the past. It's not incontrovertible science that allows us to have a Skype call or a phone call. It's different, but academics like to paint this broad picture that there's all these incontrovertible theories, and there just isn't. And nobody has a time machine. I guess what I'm saying is I do a comparative analysis of numerous sources, not just modern science, to try to sift through these similar details about the past. And these are the things that jump out, the topics that I've talked about. No, I'm with you. I don't have a lot of faith. There's a lot of ego and agenda in every walk of life, but especially in academia. Nobody wants to say, okay, I accept your new theory after I've been teaching it for 30 years and wrote 7 books about it and have tenure,
Sure. Hence why people are taught today that Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas. What is the connection between giants and the alleged lost continent of Atlantis?
Well, the sources that I rattled off, like the great mystics Edgar Cayce, Rudolf Steiner, and Madame Blavatsky, they all talk about, and the Rosicrucians and Freemasons, their literature, they talk about Atlantis existing in the middle of the Atlantic, and that a cataclysm destroyed it 13,000 years ago, like Plato told us, and that giants and little people were supposed to be part of the population of Atlantis. So it has this mystical ancient connection. And then you go to these the British Isles, and they have all these myths and legends about, lioness and high Brazil, and they have stories of like giant people coming who they're considered malevolent or they bring culture, and it's the kind of same myths and legends you find all around the world: the Great Flood, and then giants showing up. In esoteric traditions, Atlantis is considered a reality, and it was actually located from the Canary Islands to the Azore Islands, and all the way to Bimini. And
yet, where's the proof?
There is.
What, the Bimini Road?
No, I'm saying that there's core samples that were done on the Mid-Atlantic Range in the 70s by Soviet scientists around the Azores, and they reveal it's like the land, even though it was vastly underwater, was once above water about 15,000 years ago. Obviously that gets dismissed like it's impossible that there was that much plate movement. But once again, you get into these, theories like plate tectonics, and what I would say when you talk about proof, you talk about sites like Göbekli Tepe or astonishing stonework in Peru and Sacsayhuaman that they have the similar iconography and engineering styles all around the world. Same iconography, same symbolism. All these crater gods carrying strange man bags around the world, and the religious documents and myths and legends basically talking about these beings showing up and restarting civilization and bringing like advanced geometry to China and the gods in Samaria, the Anunnaki. You have basically this common thread of advanced geometry, mathematics, and similar cultural traits. As far as a landmass that's been located in the Atlantic, that hasn't occurred yet.
Mm-hmm. So, how can we take this? Why do we pay so much attention to this if there's no evidence to substantiate it except a bunch of myths and urban legends?
Well, I'd say it's woven into a story about the past that it remains in the collective unconscious, and it plays itself out in books and movies and shows like Ancient Aliens, and it just resonates with people, I think, because it's part of the Jungian collective unconscious. And it's there are two camps that one alternative-minded camp is that a lot of these ideas, these general themes, are true about the past. Human genetic intervention to create Homo sapiens, on and on. Then there's a scientific side, amoeba to Homo sapiens to skyscrapers. There's no lost civilization. Everything goes in one direction. There's no cataclysm. So you have competing theories. And I just think, society is fascinated with Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and Lost Worlds because I think there is some validity to it. And once again, a lot of things that were considered heresies have been now proven fact incontrovertibly by science. Like I said, floods and cataclysms.
Let's talk about the floods. I had an archaeologist on the other night who unequivocally said the flood was localized. It wasn't a worldwide flood. And then when you get a scientist on and a climatologist on, they concur with the archaeologist because it is totally impossible for the water to raise that high around the world. So who does John Q. Public, like me, believe? If you guys in the scientific field and the archaeological field can't get on the same page, what does that tell us about the people that we're supposed to put our trust in when it comes to telling us the truth about the past?
Well, I think it's just, people have agendas. They want certain things to be true, or they can bend facts and they can jump off of theories that really aren't too sound and make these logic bridges that are really far to make them work. But, something like, when I say a great flood, there was a cataclysmic flood in the United States, in North America, no question about it. Did all, around the world, did this occur? No, but not necessarily. But there's massive flooding that took place 13,000 years ago in one event. It wasn't just localized flooding. There's all kinds of evidence. And I know skeptics and professionals have dragged their feet for a long time about this idea, but there's mounting evidence that it's true. I don't think it's like...
Okay, listen, I've got to take my final break. Please stand by. Exonation. Jim Vieira is our special guest. Facebook.com/Giants on Record, and he, along with Hugh Newman, are the authors of Giants on Record. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Jim Vieira is our guest this hour. Facebook.com/Giants on Record, along with Hugh Newman. Jim has written a book entitled Giants on Record. It's available on Amazon.com. when I was reading your intro, let me just get to the point. Jim has investigated worldwide ancient stone sites, studied global indigenous and oral traditions, religious documents, the readings of the great mystics, and the literature of the secret societies to form an alternative theory regarding the origins of civilization, a theory almost in perfect alignment with the readings of the famed sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce. Now, what were those readings?
Well, Cayce was born in Hopkinsville, Kentucky in 1877, and he had an 8th grade education, but he would go into a trance state and give health readings for people. It came about kind of organically, and doctors and all kinds of professionals started sending him their hopeless patients because he had such a good track record. And then Cayce started to talk about lost worlds and Atlantis in his readings while he was talking about previous lifetimes of his patients. So he eventually kicked out 14,000 readings and 25 million words that's housed at the Cayce Library. And Cayce specifically talked about Atlantis and the different destructions, and the last destruction being 13,000 years ago. So he gave all these readings about the past, about androgynous created gods, polydactylism, 6 fingers and 6 toes, giants and the little people, and they match with pretty much with Plato, with Madame Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, the Rosicrucians of Freemasons. They all say the same thing. They all talk about Atlantis existing. They all talk about created gods who are androgynous. So there's all these levels of specificity, and then you find these created gods that are androgynous all around the planet. They're carrying like these strange man bags, like in Samaria or Quetzalcoatl at the Olmec site in La Venta on the other side of the Atlantic. So there's all these levels of specificity aligned with this kind of strange and specific iteration of the past.
But no evidence.
Well, I'd say there's...
It's hearsay. It's hearsay. It's a legend. It's a myth. It's a story. It's an oral tradition. That doesn't mean it's real. Plato, how come other philosophers and other people of the time didn't talk about Atlantis? It was only when Plato talked about it that the myth, the legend was born.
No, that's not true. Herodotus, who lived before Plato, actually talked about Atlantis specifically before Plato was even born.
So maybe
Aelian,
Plato,
Theopompus. There's a host of the 7 or 8 other chroniclers who also talked about Atlantis as well.
But still, no evidence, no proof, hearsay. So why does this? At the end of the day, how does this help mankind or society? How does it feed the hungry? How does it clothe the people who need clothes? How does it take care of the sick? Why do so many people pay so much attention to these stories?
Well, I'd say that they're a part of humanity's past, and that we had, a cataclysm 13,000 years ago. There's no question about that, and that everything got reset back, and we've lost a lot of knowledge. And the Maya codices were destroyed. We lost the Library of Alexandria, and we wouldn't have this discussion if that was still around, I don't think. But, as far as I'm concerned, I think a lot of people get into these subjects, but it's kind of a way to get into metaphysics and quantum mechanics and spirituality. And with a lot of, like, Edgar Cayce's readings are all about, like, the holographic nature of reality, the Rosicrucians of the Freemasons. It's like you treat others how you want to be treated because it's the unconscious messages you're sending to your own mind. There's a lot of, like, esoteric teachings and the literature of all these entities that are talking about this bizarre story of the past. And it's not about, hypermaterialism. It's about the nature of the soul. Where did the universe originate from? Is it a dreaming delusion we're having here? How do you treat others like you want to be treated?
Oh yeah, that's
Stuff
in the
like
Bible.
that. So,
that's in the Bible too. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So that's nothing earth-shaking. And as far as Cayce is concerned, wasn't his one of his predictions about Atlantis that it would rise from the Atlantic in 1960, between 1960 and 1967, and it never did.
Yeah, well, that's when the Bimini Road was found, and they researchers point to that. I would say that Cayce had several predictions about the future that never came to pass, like an Earth, a pole shift in 1996, and he himself said the future. It's I look to his past readings and try to verify them, which a lot of have been verified, like the Nile flowed backwards, and the Essenes had women in their ranks. These things he predicted, about the past came true. But into the future, I wouldn't, hold out any hope that anybody can actively, predict the future.
Okay, so if he did not predict the future, how come, once again, there are so many people who take everything he says as the word?
Well, he has a pretty good track record of in the past of telling these different stories of the past that when you go around, you look at evidence, you look at a variety of sources, like he predicted or he talked about the Americas were populated 50,000 years ago, and that was ridiculous way back when, and now it's being verified. First it's the Clovis barrier, now it's more in alignment with Cayce. Cayce predicted or talked about multi-regionalism, and now out of Africa is dead, and all these anthropologists are saying maybe multi-regionalism is how the human race came about. So it's looking at the past through his lens. I don't want to be dogmatic about anything. I do a comparative analysis. I don't make up my own theories. I just try to take what all these chroniclers and mystics are saying and secret societies and see if there's veracity there. It's not like I have all the answers. I think, looking into the past, I try to bypass the human ego and agenda, and oftentimes like mystics or secret orders do a better job than just, some agenda-driven professional.
So would you say that the interest in giants, the interest in the esoteric and mysticism is something that has been personified by the New Age movement, the people looking for answers that they can't get through the established belief systems?
Certainly, and it's become like a new religion on the negative side, like Zachariah Sitchin and the Anunnaki. You have a lot of people who are really dogmatic about that. But I agree, it's like a faux religion for a lot of New Age seekers, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think at the end of the day, it's for me, it's the nature of the soul. What the hell am I doing renting this body for 70 or 80 years? What's going on in time and space? Those are the big questions to be asked. And I just think, we want to know these questions, and they don't get answered. They don't get answered by religion for the most part. Organized religion certainly has never answered them for me. We don't get them. Government just tells us to go shopping, So it's like, I think there's a hunger,
What happens? What happens if there is nothing? That this is all some kind of fantasy land that was created and maintained because people just can't accept that we're here today, gone tomorrow, and that's it.
Well, you mean beliefs about the past, or just
beliefs about the esoteric and what the New Agers are trying to get other people to believe in. Life after death, communication, and the list goes on and on and on. One thing that I've learned over the years is that when it comes to any of these topics that we discuss here, there's never any proof.
Well, your personal experience is a good indicator. The philosophy I study is like pure non-dualism, and it's taught by Yogananda and Jesus, Buddha, Plato, Lao Tse. It's the idea that basically this is like Plato's cave. It's a dreaming delusion, and this isn't our real state. And you don't fix the world. You kind of awaken from a world that's a freak show, and it's like the Gnostics say, it's a false reality that we're trapped here in the Matrix until we awaken from it, not as a separate, like, human stupid body hanging with an angry white guy in a throne in the sky, but like this conscious awareness that is unchangeable and has no time or separation element to it. So, when you say there's no proof for it, it's, the worldly proof it can prove things inside the illusion very well. You'll get your answers through experience, I guess. I do like ayahuasca ceremonies with shamans.
There you go.
I'll do anything for a good story and to try to find the truth. I just your personal experience is a pretty good indicator. I just advocate.
Well, I don't know if anybody can say they have a personal experience when they are under the influence of a psychedelic or a drug or anything. To me, that's just escaping reality using chemicals.
Well, it's not unicorns and fairies. I find it's like you face a lot of your demons. You work through a lot of psychological garbage. You step out of your what it does is it represses your ego, so you kind of see with clarity.
All right, I hate to do this, but we've run out of time for tonight. Exo Nation, if you'd like to get more information about Jim Vieira, visit his Facebook page at www.facebook.com. You got that so far? Facebook.com. Giants/Giants on record. I'm sorry, Exo Nation. I just don't buy it. I want evidence. I want proof. Talk is cheap. Show me the beef. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.